On this episode, we're going to show you how to make an index for your paddle. It's all part of our Sea Kayak life. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like to help us grow the channel. On this episode of Sea Kayak Life, we're going to talk about paddles.
You know, when we started out, we didn't want to spend a lot of money. We weren't sure if this was going to be the thing for us. We bought some used boats, and the guy at the boat store, I mean, maybe he was trying to upsell us, but he made a point that we should buy a more expensive paddle. I think we were going to buy $50 paddles.
So we upgraded to the $75 paddle.
Right, big spenders. But he said something we never forgot, and that is, look guys, your paddle is your engine. I was like, okay, that makes some sense.
Wait, does it? No, because aren't we really
We're the engine, right.
Yeah.
But there's some truth to the paddle. It propels you. It's your propeller.
Yeah. So our first paddle was very much like this. Now, we don't have those old paddles anymore. I really don't know what happened to them. But it had a fiberglass shaft, a poly blade, and it had a really nice feature that we really didn't know what it was for at the time, but it had an index for your control hand. And there's a little protrusion right here, and your hand just naturally grips around it.
We didn't understand the importance of it because that was the only paddle we had. But when we started going out to sea and playing around in the surf especially, I mean, on a big wave, your paddle will just get blown out of your hand. And it was nice that with this index, and it's very aggressive, so you can feel it instantly. And you know, we have a paddle leash, so if the paddle's blown out of your hand, you can reel in your paddle. But you know instantly this is the right hand, I'm in the right orientation, and you can start your maneuver to roll up with confidence, because if you don't have it oriented right,
you're going to get sucked right back into the water.
It's going to pull you right back in.
Yeah, it's horrible. So over the years, we went to more higher end paddles, and we tried different paddles, but none of them had that index on there.
And we really missed it too.
Yeah, we did.
We'd gotten very used to it. It seemed like the whole industry, all the manufacturers were going to an oval shape. So it had kind of an index, and you could sort of feel in your hand, but it was on the left hand and the right hand. And you know, if you're underwater and you're not sure what you're grabbing, the paddle felt right in this orientation, it felt right in this orientation. But when you're trying to roll up, it's a different experience.
Yes. So the orientation is critical for rolling. So what we did was we found a manufacturer. They made carbon fiber paddles,
which at the time was the lightest in the world.
Yeah, it's very light. And we had them manufacture an index in the shaft itself. And it's very aggressive and it feels really good.
Oh, it was perfect.
Yeah.
But is that practical? I mean, the larger manufacturers, they're not going to custom make a paddle for you.
Right.
So we thought, well, let's see if we can make our own.
All right, so let's talk about the materials we need for this project.
And you know, our inspiration was that first cheap paddle we had. We really liked the index on it. And we never actually cut it apart to see what it was inside it. You could tell on the outside it looked like some kind of heat shrink tubing, and the inside like a hard
plastic or
something like that. So you're going to need heat shrink tubing. You can get heat shrink tubing at most electrical supply stores, which is typically polyolefin, and it's kind of soft. We've also tried harder plastics. I'm actually not sure what this one's made out of. It's a little harder. They all work really well, but what are you going to put on the inside?
What indeed. So we tried a bunch of different things, and one day I came into the garage with tennis racket tape.
And I thought, this is never gonna work.
But it did. This is the secret sauce. The beauty of the tennis racket tape is it's got like a little strip of silicone down the middle, a little ridge, so that raises it up a little bit, and then when you tape it, because it's tape, when you tape it to the shaft, it makes a nice little ridge.
Something about the heat shrink, shrinking it down kind of makes it a little thicker, and it also feels nice that silicone in there is soft on your hand.
So this is my paddle, and here's an index that we've put on it, and it's been on here for at least 5 years, right?
Something like that.
So it's held up really well, but it's got a gash in it. It's getting kind of ratty. So we're going to cut this off, and then we're going to install a new one.
So I've looked at Dan's paddles and taken some measurements and made some notes, and they're all kind of the same. I'm just kind of measuring how far down the shaft he likes to keep the index, and it came up with some measurements. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut off the old index now. I'm going to be super careful because obviously I don't want to damage the paddle underneath. I'm just going to make a very gentle cut down through here. I'm actually just cutting into the tennis racket tape below. And once this starts to come off, it should tear off pretty easy. Yeah. I'm just going to score the end just a little bit. Yep, there it goes. No problem. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. Actually, there's a little residue on here, but I like that because I can see easily where to put the other one back on. So let's take some measurements. So the heat shrink needs to be 10 1/4. So let's mark out 10 1/4 inches. Doesn't have to be super perfect. All right, let's make a cut using regular scissors. All right, there we go. So there's our heat shrink. Let's just see what that looks like. Make sure it looks like what was there before. Yeah, looks good. And then the
Secret sauce?
The secret sauce. Let's see, we had a piece that we found in our bag, and apparently we've already cut this to the exact right size, so. All right, so that's ready to go. Put that away. All right. So the important thing is we want the index to be exactly perpendicular with the blade, and that's really just because that's what we're used to. You know, I had one index that kind of went under these knuckles and one that went under these knuckles, but I've gotten used to if it's perpendicular to the blade, it kind of falls right under these knuckles, and that's what we're used to. So we're going to put it back just like it was. All right, I would say pull the tape off and you stick it on there. You just got to maybe look down it as you put it on, but you want it to be like perpendicular. Yeah, and can you see where it lines up?
I think so. I think
yeah, the end was right there. Yeah, so as long as you got it lined up, that looks right. Yeah, that looks great. Looks good to me.
Okay.
Does it feel good?
I think so.
All right. The only thing that's left is, and I kind of like to put this, you know, there's a fold in here, and it's going to come out when you shrink it down, but it might make sense to put it at the top. Okay. So, here we go. That's where it goes. All right, now it's time for a heat source to shrink the heat shrink. And they actually make air guns that are kind of like a big, hefty hair dryer. It's a little bit hotter than a hair dryer. I'm going to use a propane torch just because that's what I'm comfortable with. But you're literally playing with fire, so you have to be careful. You gotta be careful not to damage the paddle. Just keep the heat moving. Rotate the paddle a little at a time. Alright, I mean that's That's good in there. It's actually not even too hot. Feels good. It's good and tight. Let's cool it off. All right, I think that came out pretty good. See what you think.
Ooh, I like it. I like it a lot.
You know, I get nervous every time we make these, but they always turn out really good.
And it's not too hard.
No, this is actually one of the easiest modifications we make to our gear, and we carry these materials with us when we go on a trip. I mean, it's pretty easy to do out the back of your car in a parking lot or on the beach, and yeah, it came out good.
Well, I think the sun is out. It's a beautiful day. It's time for a paddle and try this out. It's all part of RC Kayak life.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like to help us grow our channel. And here's 2 more videos that I think you will like.